This is not a Malay nation. This is not a Chinese nation. This is not an Indian nation.
I think everyone's opinion on 1965 will actually depend on what you're actually expecting from the movie. If you're expecting a biopic about the late Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, as many of the marketing clips has led people to believe, you are not going to get it here. In fact, the filmmakers have explicitly stated that LKY is not the main focus of this movie, he's just a side character. But after watching this movie, I just felt that I wish that this movie was actually about LKY, because Lim Kay Tong portrayed Mr. Lee Kuan Yew very well in that short amount of screen time. Instead, the bulk of the focus on 1965 is a period drama that has little to do with Mr. Lee. It centers on a Chinese cop in a time period where Singapore was still part of Malaysia, who was misunderstood for causing a tragedy that happened to a Malay family. If you have read your history books, you already know that racial tensions between the Chinese and the Malay were already very high during this period, and as this story spread across town, it of course made things worse. The film actually opens up with a narration of a member of that particular Malay family, and this is where I think the problem with the main story actually starts. We are introduced to several characters whose lives intertwine in this apparently epic story, but I was never really sure who was the actual main character. This issue was not alleviated with Mr. Lee's out-of-nowhere appearances throughout the entire movie, and it was during those appearances that actually detract from the story rather than helping it. And the weird thing is that Mr. Lee and the main characters never actually meet or even have brief interactions. Then the question is, why is Mr. Lee even needed in this story? Now, I don't mind having a period drama revolving around certain characters in the Singapore-Malaya era. And I also don't mind watching a biopic that is actually focused on Mr. Lee's struggles to make Singapore stably independent. But you can't mash these two movies together and still expect both of them to work. And I think this is what I felt the movie was like. It felt like it was made out of parts from two separate movies. And to illustrate my point, I need to talk about the ending a little bit without giving too much away, because it's kind of a major point. But if you don't want to hear, please skip a few seconds ahead. As some of you can probably infer from the movie's social network marketing, Lee Kuan Yew's death and funeral is featured towards the end of the movie. But this resulted in the main storyline not really ending in a satisfactory manner. It's that you expect our main characters to have some form of resolution and closure at the end, but then we cut to some LKY funeral footage and suddenly the focus of the movie was about LKY's contribution to Singapore's stable independence. Where was all that during the rest of the movie? If the movie was not about LKY as the main character, then why is the ending even about him?
Be firm, be calm.
If the script had been more focused on either the biopic aspect or the period drama aspect, this host wouldn't even exist in the first place. So it's a mild consolation that 1965 has a much higher production value and scale than other local films on the market right now. The opening riot scene is actually very well directed, shot and edited. Director Randy Ang is actually really good at staging action scenes. In fact, if you are looking at how our local film action scenes can look better, this riot scene is a great example of how to do it. There's also a fire scene in the climax, and you can tell that that's real fire and not just CG fire that's composited in post. Either that or the visual effects team did a really great job of making it look real. I found the film very impressive from a production standpoint, but they're not backed up by a coherent movie. I wish I could give the movie just a mild recommendation just to see Lim Kay Tong play LKY. But the fact is those scenes are few and far between and was not the focus of the whole movie. And to watch the movie as a period drama by itself is not a satisfying experience either. And it just made me wish that those two elements were separate movies. I will admit, I was honestly looking forward to sing this movie's praises and recommend the film mainly for its above the norm production values. But the film itself was so disjointed and such a frustrating experience that I just can't recommend it now, even just to see Lim Kay Tong play LKY.